We're going to be visiting with Sam Amick, his weekly appearance from The Athletic, joining us here. Lots to discuss with Sam, with free agency officially beginning tomorrow. Lots of stuff regarding the Kings, so we look forward to checking with Sam, and let's do it right now. He is joining us, Sam Amick from The Athletic with me, Jason Ross, Jay Johnson. Sam, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, gentlemen. How we doing? I'm well.
Good. We're doing great. Let's just jump right into it, Sam. I mean, Kings got some money. There's rumors everywhere. What's the, I don't know if wildest, but the spiciest rumor maybe you've heard regarding the Sacramento Kings?
I'll be honest, this is not what they, Sactown Sports wants to hear. I should come with all the goods, but the Kings are keeping it fairly quiet, to be honest with you.
Probably good.
Yeah, for sure. The Harrison Barnes thing, obviously, if I think last week I might have been pushing it towards a possible kind of separation. And this week I would say it seems more the other way. If I had to handicap it, I think Harrison probably is back. From there, they continued. I mean, like the Kyle Kuzma connection is just, I think, largely the history of the Kings having pursued him and thought they had him before. But, even on that front, beyond the Kings, his market seems to be a little mysterious in terms of what sort of payday and how many teams might be involved for somebody like Kuzma. The Draymond thing that we've bandied about, I think, is definitely not happening. So I don't know what other names come to mind for you guys, but it's funny. I guess bigger picture, how I would probably implore Kings fans to not forget that it wasn't long ago, that they didn't have much to be excited about, and so if he hits a bonus on a renegotiate and extend, and then build around him a little bit like that, even that without fireworks would be a pretty great offseason.
Sam, you dropped in HB, my man Sam. I am. First of all, good morning, man.
Jay, good morning, brother.
Absolutely,
good to hear you.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, brother. HB, as you said last week, was something different compared to this week. I know you don't have the numbers. I know you're not a capologist, Sam, but I mean, just from your standpoint, if he was to come back this way, I would imagine it's at a number that's lower. Are we looking more in that $14 to $15 million range a year if he is to return?
To be honest, Jay, probably not. I think it's probably in the same ballpark that he was before.
Wow.
But you got to remember, I hear you, but it's apples to oranges compared to the last time he signed that contract, with the way the cap has gone up. Like, if you want to, I tell people all the time, like, we really should, even in the media, we should more often, report on contracts within the context of like percentage of the cap versus dollar figure. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because it hits different, because 18 million off of, whatever, let's say the cap was at 92 when he signed that deal. Well, now it's, 30, 40 above that. So percentage wise, to your point, I think his contract will be a smaller percentage of the cap. But if I had to throw a dart at the board and give you a number, I think in that 18 range is probably what I would expect it to be.
In general, Sam, Kings related, other teams related, and a ton of teams don't have money, but do you get the feeling that the guys that are up for free agency are going to get the massive payday, or are some numbers like Vucevic re-signed, and it's, 3 at 60 is not outlandish for a guy that's been an all-star before. 20 million is still great, but are numbers going to be out of whack, or the new CBA kind of maybe correct that a bit?
I think it probably corrected it a bit. This second apron thing, guys, that, the second tier of luxury tax that comes with, so many restrictions and penalties, it's basically an unofficial hard cap. That's kind of what we're learning this offseason. When you've got the big bad Warriors, sending guys out just to get off money. I know they got Chris Paul, and they are actually excited about Chris Paul, but like the Jordan Poole contract, the John Collins to Utah, $25 million for nothing, basically. The Jazz take him on, and the Hawks don't get much after all those years of shopping John Collins. That's all tied to the second apron, and the economics of the NBA are very different this summer. So to your question about, the paydays, the stars are going to get paid, but one guy who comes to mind is like James Harden. I'm really curious to see where he goes again, just handicapping it here a day before free agency, a lot of noise going back to Philly now versus Houston. But like, what does that number look like? It'll be a big number, but you got to remember, you got people out there like Damian Lillard making, at the end of his contract, like $63 million, which is just insanity. I do think that there's a suppression effect that has come with this second apron.
Sam, I've always said this. I've said this to you on numerous times, and I'm not just, blowing smoke, man. To me, you are one of the best, if not the best NBA insider for me. And to hear you tell us that, look, the Kings are keeping it close to the vest, lets me know they're keeping it close to the vest. And so I prefaced my question with that as being this: best guess. And I mean, that's all we're doing here is, do you think, and I asked this question because for me, free agency, I don't see that impact player for the Sacramento Kings, in my opinion. I'm looking for a bigger name, and that probably is going to take a trade. Do you think the Kings go free agent, or do you think they look for, a bigger name on the trade market?
I think on the trade, I mean, again, I'll just say trade, Jay, because we don't have that free agent target right now that I'm aware of. The Kuzma thing, again, I keep going back to it because I'd be a little worried about a possible overpay there. Kuz has been out there publicly talking about $30 million a year. Like, you can't do that. Like, I don't think anyway. But trade wise, they have continued to, make inquiries on guys like OG Anunoby, which that's somebody they've looked at for a long time, but Toronto is just not kind of giving that in. Pascal Siakam, also Toronto, somebody the Kings have inquired about in the past. The OG thing, that was fresh, within the past month, where they tried again and there was just nothing doing there. So I think it's probably trade. And I think, again, that right now their main priority is, all right, we think we got something special last year with the Sabonis-Fox duo and then everything around it. But that means you got to hold on to Sabonis. So, the kind of help that they got with the CBA, where the veteran extensions goes up 40% raise based on your previous deal versus 20 prior, that's a big deal. And then, like you kind of alluded to, I think trade wise, just keep chopping and keep pushing.
Sam, I'm going to plead ignorance here, so hopefully you can help me out on the Sabonis conversation of a contract extension now. The obvious statement is if you extend him, you now have the guarantee that he is yours. You can still trade him later if you wanted, but you don't have to go through next summer wondering if he's going to leave. Besides that, what would be the other benefit? Because to me, something I was discussing with Jay, it's like an NFL team that's got a rookie quarterback or a quarterback on a young contract that's good. You could build all the rest of the team while they're probably underpaid. So it feels like Sabonis is underpaid. I'd personally like to see the Kings take advantage of that for one more year. Now, that doesn't help Sabonis, but what is the true benefit of Sacramento, not Sabonis, but Sacramento extending him this year?
Man, how do I answer that, Jay?
Does it get messy?
No, I just think that since you said Sacramento versus Kings, it's both, but this is a small market where high profile guys, more often than not, when they get here, we all know the Chris Webber story. He wanted to bounce the second he got here. Heading into last season, and I don't want to overstate this, there were some of the similar rumblings. We put it this way, it was enough that reporting wise, we made phone calls to say, is Sabonis okay in Sac, or is he trying to get out? And we were told that he was fine, but those questions were kind of right there, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have a really good year. And so it's just not a small thing I hear you for sure on the idea that they are less flexible if they give him more money right now. That is a fact. I also just, again, look at this free agency market, look at the options, and it's I don't think that you want to be out there drunk shopping, so to speak, just because you got a bunch of money and not giving, give the money to Sabonis. You're not overpaying him. He's going to be closer to market value. I think he'll very likely kind of agree on a number that still gives you room to play, so to speak. And I think that's the path you go down versus, just trying to see if I can get the top 3 free agents in this class. I will say with all of that, I don't think this will happen, but one guy that I think would be great if they could get their hands on is Bruce Brown, but they're not being tied to him. right now, the Lakers are being tied to him. He's still surprisingly looks like he might go back to Denver. So we'll see what happens there. But it's a fairly light free agency class. So to me, like giving a handful of that money to Sabonis is just fine.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sam. I'll ask the obligatory Trey Lyles question. I don't think it gets done anytime soon, just based on what you're saying. It sounds like Sacramento might be out there big duck hunting and big game hunting. So maybe he's not a priority. But what's the timeline on the Trey Lyles thing when it comes to Sacramento?
Yeah, I mean, just naturally, it'll probably, like you said, Jay, it'll take a while. He's one of those kind of second, third wave free agents where it's, the free agency is just, if you kind of picture it like a lake where we're all the players around the sides trying to, get something to drink. And then little by little, that water just gets smaller and smaller. Like, that's what free agency is. The pool of money just, shrinks and shrinks, but you kind of gotta, everybody's boxing each other out to get some of theirs. And Trey is, he's going to be one of those guys who's got to wait. That's not any disrespect. He's just not a star. And he can wait, and that's fine. And I mean, the fit for him last year was obviously very, very good for both sides. Again, in terms of chatter, like absolutely a guy that it appears that they want to bring back and very possibly will. But to me, that'll be like like around the 10th, 11th, 12th, mid-July type thing.
Talking with Sam Amick here from The Athletic, and a lot of insight here on free agency regarding the Kings around the league as well. This will kind of tie in around the league and the Kings, Sam. At least two names that have been associated, whether it's legit or not, around Sacramento, and they're from a good team, the Milwaukee Bucks. What about Middleton and Brook Lopez? Likelihood they return, likelihood they become true free agents and play the field. Like, what do you think happens with those two guys?
So Middleton, I think, will probably be back, but again, just full transparency, I'll probably make some calls today to make sure that's the case, including calling our guy Eric Name, who's our Bucks beat writer, to get his read on it. Because here's how that one strikes me. Yeah, name alone, Chris Middleton's a multiple-time All-Star, fantastic player, but he's coming off, the worst year of his career and kind of this stretch of his career. Health was an issue. Reliability was an issue. Performance was an issue. Had some good moments, but was not the guy he had been before. But the way the Bucks books are structured, he is their best option at that spot because they don't have room otherwise. So it's one of those things where you either fill that slot with Chris Middleton or you let him, walk. And now Giannis is looking at you like, well, this ain't good, And with Giannis, of course, the whole time you always have to worry about him not wanting to be in Milwaukee anymore. So they need to lock Middleton up, even in his kind of, lessened state, if you will. Brook Lopez has been tied a lot to Houston. But, again, just handicapping it here, like I think probably more likely that he stays with the Bucks, at his age and this stage, knowing how good of a fit he is and how they obviously just absolutely dropped the ball in the playoffs, but they were dominant in the regular season and still have a runway here to do something special and be a title contender next year. So if I had to guess, I think Brook probably goes back to Milwaukee, but they're one of those cap strap teams that it's about retention at this point, as opposed to going out and getting new pieces other than with their taxpayer mid-level. Sam,
rocking with Sam Amick, of course, the guy from The Athletic, man. Sam, I'm going big game hunting now, man. I'm gonna throw big names at you, Sam, man. Zion, talk to me, brother. Is Zion even remotely close to leaving New Orleans?
I don't know for where. The first part of that equation, Jay, is New Orleans remotely close to saying goodbye to Zion? My opinion is the answer is yes. I just don't know where. Now, if you look at the Damian Lillard situation that we kind of popped the week off with, writing about all the escalating tension there, I think it speaks volumes that, by all accounts, Portland probably had a very good crack at getting Zion if they wanted him. But did not seem to signal that they wanted him. And I think that is super interesting because here you have another small market team that could have been desperate and said, well, maybe this will be the guy. And I don't know how Damian sees Zion, so that's a huge missing component of this conversation. But like, the desperation that typically compels small market teams to just say, Zion, like, let's do it. We don't care that he's played, 1/3 of the games in the NBA in his career. But, the interest in, more importantly, the concern league wide, I think is massive. Like, he's great, when he's on the floor, but it's a lot of injuries you can look at and say, man, nothing but sympathy, prayers up for what you've been through. With Zion, there's some of that, but then there's also the, okay, but how much of it is self-inflicted? Training regimen, that type of stuff. Like, fair or not, the book on him has now become like, he's not just dedicating himself the way that somebody with that kind of talent, you would like to see them do. So that's where I don't know about the market. I mean, I think that door's open. Just don't know who's going to walk through it.
Sam, sticking on that same theme that Jay started with, bigger names, you mentioned him, Dame. Is Portland really going to be committed to that thought process they shared the other day that they want to continue to build around Damian Lillard? Do you buy that?
No, it's such a weird situation. I think it just feels like a waiting game where they are daring him to ask out. Like, I don't think, are they making calls on different guys? Sure. But they're, signaling against the guys like Zion. They're signaling against the Paul Georges, things of that nature. They're even floating. This one cracked me up. This guy does a great job at Yahoo Sports, but Jake Fisher had written about, the Portland's looking at Bam Adebayo. And it was like, my God, like, who in Portland got somebody to write that? Like, no, it's going the other way. Dame wants to go join Bam Adebayo, and Pat Riley is laughing at the phone if you want to talk about Bam going to Portland. So I don't take their big game hunting all that seriously. And I think it's because I don't blame them. They see this young core that they have now, and they like what they have. And, even more so to a great degree after the draft. Like, they were excited not only about Scoot Henderson, not only about Chris Murray, although one of these days I keep disrespecting this young man because I'll bring him up on interviews and then I forget his name. I think it's Ryan, like Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Number 43 pick in the draft was invited to the green room, which, as you guys know, means you're good enough to be considered, in that conversation. And then the Blazers, allegedly had him in the lottery on their board. So they got 3 guys that they feel very good about. And I feel like they are now kind of just, looking at Dame saying, no, we love you and we want you to stay. But it's probably going to be as the guy who still carries a big load, who, mentors these young guys. And then maybe in 2, 3, 4 years, we're really something when he's going to be, 36 years old. And that's the problem. So now I think becomes a question of, is Dame going to finally do it and kind of raise his hand and say, I think I'm ready to go.
Sam, man, one of the great things I love about you, and I'm all about giving people praise and flowers, and I know that's not you, but I love the fact that a lot of times you don't speak matter-of-factly. It's always about your feel, and, I don't know what's going on, even like what you just talked about, Pat Riley and the Miami Heat, where others kind of, other NBA insiders, they seem to speak matter-of-factly. And I say that to say, give me my guy. This is my guy, man. Love my guy, Paul George, brother. And I know you're not going to give me what I want to hear, but I would sure love to hear a little bit of something from you now.
You talking about Paul and Sac?
Paul, no, not in Sac, man. Just getting out of the Clipper land and him having to carry Kawhi.
Yeah, I think those, it's funny because those rumblings came and then they were, then you had the public pushback from the Clippers, claiming that it was overstated, but then guess what? Like, on the back end, like, that chatter is back. Again, I don't know who the possible takers might be, but that crossed my desk again yesterday. Uh-oh. Like, I think the Paul George thing is still out there. Now, the disclaimer I'll give, and we talk about this in some capacity every year, is like, I get it. Like, it's so much fun to speculate and talk about all these rumors, but it's like, if we sat on here and talked about every conversation that gets had, it would blow your mind. You know what I mean? Like the disconnect between how many conversations happen versus how many get talked about publicly is pretty vast, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, I guess I'm giving a little qualifier on the PG stuff, but like it does seem real because the one thing we know is that if a team sees a guy as part of its future, no matter what, then they just don't entertain those phone calls. And right now it does appear that the Clippers are entertaining those phone calls.
Did the Gordon waiving yesterday, I don't know if it surprised you, does that have any effect on any of this, or is that just strictly financial?
I mean, I hesitate to call anything financial when you're talking about Steve Ballmer. Like he doesn't know what that word means anymore because he got a blank check. So I admittedly don't have the exact interpretation of that. As far as Eric himself and what might be next, keep an eye out on Minnesota as a possibility. He's tight with Mike Conley and they need shooting out there. So who knows if something like that might happen. But I think it was probably more strategic beyond the economics because, Steve Ballmer is a pretty wealthy man.
Okay. Since you said conversations are to be had, Sam, and I would imagine you've heard at this point every single name in the NBA be discussed. If we've seen Kevin Durant traded over the last few years and, guys of Damian Lillard's ilk, who is the one guy right now that you've heard come across your desk and you're like, wow, I didn't see that coming, or I didn't even know that the conversation was to be had for him, like a SGA or something like that, where it seems like he's locked in with that team, but maybe someone's had a conversation about?
Man, it's a great question, Jay. I'm admittedly blanking a little bit. I mean, here's where my mind goes. This is kind of the reverse of what you're asking. The one I'm surprised is not, that I thought was probably going to be that guy, is Trey Young. And that does not appear to be the case. You know what I mean? Like the new front office, new management, Landry Fields running it, Quinn Snyder, obviously massive voice in that room. It appears that they are kind of recommitting to Trey Young. So that one is an interesting one. Beyond that, I don't know. Like you got the Toronto, and again, this is barely answering your question, but like the Toronto thing is so interesting to me because you got these really good players and a mediocre team at this point, and a GM and Masai Ujiri who is as calculated and patient and good as anybody. And Siakam and OG in particular are two guys that these other good teams are just dying to get their hands on. And I think it's funny that like as far as like this whole chess game that these people play, like Masai and his ability to just wait despite the fact that his phone keeps ringing, I find really interesting. But as far as a star, I don't know. I mean, we already hit on it, but like the Zion thing was probably one of those where, I mean, that's a generational player that we thought was going to be, as long as he was happy in New Orleans, we thought that he would be a Pelican for life if he wanted to be, you know what I mean? And now you wonder about that.
Right. Last one for you on my end, man. Someone that has enamored me, and he's had some off the court situations. Saw him get picked up the option. Miles Bridges. I mean, you think he's in play anywhere?
I mean, I believe gave him the qualifying. He's in play. He's a very good player, but you talk about there's bad headlines, and then there's his version of bad headlines, and that's the one where, we'll see. You could argue that he paid his price and he's got the suspension, but it is one of those where teams are going to think twice and three times and four times about adding him. I don't have much for you there, Jay, in terms of where he might land, but he's got his own case, because if you are going to, no pun intended, if you're going to think about adding Miles, then you got to get the PR folks involved, you got to get the lawyers involved, and you got to decide how's the fan base going to react to this. So, we'll see where he ends up.
Well, Sam, you gave us some incredible material today. We really appreciate it. Always keep up the great work. You'll be at the Classic next week, right?
Yeah, I'll be there on the 3rd. Okay. I'm going to skip out on the 5th, going to Vegas early. We actually have a little athletic meeting out there. So looking forward to the first day. Unfortunately, Mr. Wembanyama didn't feel like joining us. But, yeah, it'll be fun.
Sam, man, let me say this, and I've said this to you a bunch of times because I don't have the opportunity on the air to say this. Man, you are extremely at the top of the game of what you do, brother. And I just want to make sure you get that, man. Like I said, we've had conversation off the air, but you deserve to get it on air big time.
You're a kind soul, man. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate both you guys. And just trying to do. I'm lucky to be here, man. 20 years or something.
Yes,
that's awesome.
You're not trying, you're doing it.
You're doing it well. Yep.
See, I say I'm trying. That's how I keep going. You got to stay
humble.
That's how you do it.
That's right. That's right. Well, 100%. Sam, terrific stuff. We'll see you soon and talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys. Be good.
All right. Thank you. That is Sam Amick. Wow. So much to discuss. We got to recap that. Sam gave a lot of incredible material. We have that when we come back next on Sactown Sports.